I want to talk about your book and what was the inspiration behind.
Sure. So this when I first started really getting into the research of this book, it's 2016. I'm actually living in Maryland at the time. I'm living in PG County, and I'm working for SB Nation, part of Vox. I had part of my job was being a staff writer for college sports. I ran an Ohio State site, and then I also did a lot of back end like ad sales and business development and kind of like operational kind of stuff for this now. And one of the really big stories around that time was the Big 12 potentially expanding. They essentially solicited bids from like 20 schools across the country to potentially join. They ended up not adding anybody, but it became like this big public circus. And with everybody on the internet chasing the story, you're trying to think of how could I write about this and advance this storyline in a unique way without the same kind of access or connections. It's a little bit different for me now that I've been doing this for a while, but I was earlier in my career then. I didn't have the phone number for the right consultants or television people or university presidents, so it'd be hard for me to break who they were going to take. And I didn't want to be in the business of just aggregating what everybody else was doing. So part of what I thought I could do were two things. I got really into using the Freedom of Information Act and filing public records requests to get correspondence between the institutions and conferences or schools trying to figure out what their pitch would be. And then I got into newspaper archive work. I got my newspapers.com subscription and was trying to find like let's trace the historical context for some of these things here to advance this story. And those stories that we wrote for SB Nation performed really well, but then it got me thinking like, okay, I'm relearning stuff from the 80s and 90s, or some of these things I was alive for, but I wasn't old enough to be paying attention. Some of it I kind of heard secondhand, but never read the contemporary accounts. What else is there? Like let's keep digging. And that's what I learned about the airplane conference. That's what I learned about some of the plans for the Metro Super Conference. And that just opened up rabbit hole after rabbit hole. So I found myself just digging into this in the evenings, and talking about it with my colleagues, and realized this might be a fun book, which would also be a way to establish more of a beat for myself and kind of separate, elevate me from what I was doing in my career and give me an excuse to dig into a bunch of books and learn about things that I only knew part of the story or some of the story for, and that's kind of what got everything going.